Well, if I can make a question, talking about the future trend, of course, could you point us a possible future trend inside the walls of internet, if it's possible to do?
Well, gee, that's not an easy question to answer. I mean, look, one way I can respond to your question without really answering it is to point out that, I think Austrian economists tend to be a little bit wiser, maybe, or more circumspect than other economists in attempting to predict the future. Or rather, one way to answer is, well, if I knew the answer to that question, I certainly wouldn't tell all of you. I'd be out investing in anticipation of making a lot of money. So, being an economist or an analyst is different from being an entrepreneur. But, look, my best guess would be not much different from what other people who follow technology trends are estimating, right? It seems that from what the scientists tell us, they keep saying that Moore's law is going to stop. Eventually you're going to run up against some physical restrictions. You can't make a computer smaller than one atom, okay? But we seem to be a long way away from reaching that limit. There continue to be new scientific breakthroughs, so-called quantum computing and so on. So Moore's law seems still to be going strong. Commentators tell us, experts tell us that sort of decentralized artificial intelligence algorithms will continue to be more important. So artificial intelligence has not been very successful in doing what people thought it would do back in the 1940s or 50s, that we could program a machine to be a super intelligent computer. However, if you have many, many hundreds or thousands or millions of small computers, each of which is not very smart, but in the aggregate, they can perform, incredibly well. So even just some of the, when you go to Amazon.com and it says, hey, Peter, you might like this book. Based on books that you bought in the past, we predict that you might like this one. Those prediction technologies continue to get better. Maybe you use a streaming audio music service like Pandora. I use Pandora, and as you're listening to a song, you can click thumbs up or thumbs down, and it tries to form a model of your musical taste. Right? Now, no one could write down a computer program to model a human being's musical taste, but sort of incrementally through trial and error, using large amounts of data, these very sort of inductive rather than deductive algorithms seem to be getting better at doing that. So I would expect that kind of limited artificial intelligence, limited robotics, robots that aren't very smart but can vacuum. They already have little robot vacuum cleaners, right? This kind of limited intelligence that can do good things by being networked on the internet would become more important. But I really don't have any special insight. I just read the same things that you guys all read.
Ok. Por favor, tem uma pergunta ali em cima.
Hello. What's your take on net neutrality, and what do you think this business practice might spread to other countries?
It's a very good question, so-called net neutrality. And does everyone know what that means? The idea that the government should impose some kind of restrictions on what network providers can do. So for example, people want to make it illegal for your ISP, the company that provides the network access to your home, to block certain kinds of content or to favor one newspaper over another, let's say, or one television channel over another, or to let certain kinds of information go through faster and make other kinds of information have a slower access to the network. It is argued that this is unfair, that it's anti-competitive, that the network infrastructure should be treated like a public good or a public utility. It should be regulated so that every content provider, every website, every television station, every information provider should have equal access, so-called level playing field. I mean, once you put it that way, it doesn't sound all that good, right? So I'm not sympathetic to so-called network neutrality. Of course, the problem is that most of the ISPs are either state-owned or state-regulated. So the ideal system, from my point of view, would be one in which all parts of the network are private. So, websites are private, television stations are private, mobile communication networks are privately owned, wires that go in the air, under the ground, to your home are privately owned. And it would be up to market participants to decide which kinds of content they prefer, how they want to bundle or package things, what sort of prices they want to use. Just to give you one example, many of the major newspapers in the US, the New York Times, for instance, is a strong advocate of so-called net neutrality. They say it is not right that a cable company can favor one newspaper over another. But yet, if I write an article and submit it to the New York Times, do I have just as much of a chance that they'll publish it as if Paul Krugman writes an article and sends it to the New York Times? No, the New York Times is not a neutral platform. They discriminate. They favor Paul Krugman over Peter Klein, which of course is a tragedy. It's a very unwise move. But the New York Times is not a neutral platform. A television station is not a neutral platform. A website is not a neutral platform. It doesn't even make any sense, because bandwidth, network access, like any other good or service, is scarce. It must be allocated among competing uses and users, and allowing the price mechanism to perform this task is by far the best means of allocating that scarce resource.
Nós temos outro participante aqui.
Hi, my name is Gabriel, and I would like to know, because I think that we are living in a bubble, in a internet bubble. For me, it's like the dot-com bubble, because we have now new companies that many billions of value, as you know, Google and Facebook, but their revenue is just about advertisement. It's not real economy, just advertisement. What do you think about that? Do you believe that we are living in a bubble because of we have an economy that is superaquecida?
Yeah,
I have a similar question here.
Yes, I think I understand.
Vou falar em português, depois traduzir. Gostaria de saber seu ponto de vista em relação ao valor das marcas versus faturamento de empresas como Facebook, Google, Twitter. Qual o fundamento dessas empresas valerem 60 milhões de dólares, 200 milhões? So it's the same point always. He likes to know if you agree with this high amount of value that these figures.
Well, I mean, I certainly agree with you that we look at many internet companies that have very high market valuations and pretty small revenue streams or fairly narrow revenue streams, right? So Google actually does have a lot of revenues, but as the first questioner points out, they come almost exclusively through one channel, through an advertising channel. Companies like Twitter and Facebook have much smaller revenues, but yet very high sort of market valuations. And this is, of course, exactly what we saw during the dot-com bubble of the 90s. Very high ratios of market value to real earnings. Now, so does that mean that we're in a bubble now? Well, first of all, bubbles are very difficult to identify at the time. We sort of only know ex post, right? So, market participants are willing to pay pretty high prices to get shares of Google. And we might look at it and say, well, it doesn't seem like that can really be justified in terms of the expected stream of future dividends and capital gains. But it's not easy to say that the market is making a mistake in this sense. Now keep in mind that the dot-com bubble in the US was, in my interpretation, at least partly fueled by credit expansion. It was partly an Alan Greenspan bubble, right? So the Austrian theory of the business cycle, about which we've heard some already and which we'll hear more about this afternoon, I believe, it describes a specific mechanism through which credit expansion distorts the economy's capital structure, lengthens the structure of production, leads to misallocations of resources, malinvestments. But the theory does not say exactly how the malinvestments will appear in a given historical case, right? So in the bubble that we've just now gone through, the malinvestments appeared in real estate, in land values and home prices and the prices of certain kinds of securities and so on. In the 1920s, the bubble manifested itself in stocks and in other parts of the economy. And at least part of the dot-com bubble, I think, reflects a credit-fueled central bank bubble, which combined with specific technological improvements and a lot of excitement and hype, led to some of the malinvestment being channeled into technology stocks. Now, the asset bubbles that we think we're seeing now in commodities and real estate and so on, as central banks have responded to the last crash by doing exactly the same thing over again, namely increasing the amount of credit expansion, increasing the rate of credit expansion as a response to the problems caused by their previous credit expansion. It's possible that some of that may also manifest itself in technology stocks, but it's not easy to say at the time.